Okay. So it should be recording now, fingers crossed. We had a little bit of issues for a while. I don't know why Meesix wasn't really recording, or it was telling us it was recording, but it wasn't really recording, and it wasn't starting and stopping when it was meant to. So now it's supposed to be fixed. It's supposed to be working again. In the past, it used to give us the link straight away for the recording. And I think that part might have changed. I think now it sends the recording to Teach instead. So let's see what happens. Okay, just make sure everybody reminds me at the end to actually stop the recording as well, right? We remembered the first part to start the recording. Let's see if we can remember to stop it as well. Otherwise, it'll be recording, I don't know, nothing. Let's see how it goes. Okay. So today our article is about something that I don't think we've read about before. I don't think this is something we've looked at before. And it's actually about some new tests that they're doing in Europe related to social security for food. So the idea that you can have access to food, specifically to healthy food. So I think it's an interesting idea. Hopefully everybody else agrees. And I don't know, maybe some of you have even heard about these trials, and can give us some other details about how they're working or what's actually involved. But hopefully it's interesting. So let's get started. Let's see who our first reader is for today. Nadia, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Europe's unique trials in food social security. As food prices rise around the world and access to healthy nutrition falls, trials in France and Belgium are experimenting with a unique social security for food. On a crisp winter morning in Schaerbeek, a vibrant neighborhood in northeast Brussels, Marie-Christine Hash walks the aisle of Peace Coupe supermarket, filling her cart with organic fruit, vegetables, nuts, rice, pulses, and pasta. For Hash, the burden of grocery shopping amidst record high prices has been eased through her participation in one of two novel initiatives trialing social security for food. The affordability of food is a growing concern for increasing numbers of households worldwide as people struggle to cope with the greatest cost of living crisis in a generation. With some forced to cut back on food to meet other essential expenses, food insecurity is on the rise around the world. Shall I continue? Okay.
No, let's stop here. I was thinking whether we would continue a little bit more or not, but let's stop here. Okay, let's take a look at the first part. Any questions or comments in this section? Why beans are also called pulses? Good question. I think it's because technically pulses aren't just beans. There are like a few other things that we probably wouldn't call a pulse. Sorry, that we wouldn't call a bean that that are still included as part of that. I'm trying to see if I can find maybe a list of other things that might be included that we wouldn't necessarily call a bean. I guess most of them are beans, actually. Beans, peas, or lentils. Maybe because of the lentils. But I think it's more to kind of make a greater Yeah, beans, lentils, and peas. So it's not technically just beans. That might be why. This is a good explanation as well. Hang on. Pulses include beans, lentils, and peas, but the pea pod is a legume, but the pea inside is a pulse. So different parts of the same plant can actually be classified as different things as well. So maybe that's why. There you go. I learned something new today as well. Okay, crisp winter. Yeah, crisp winter generally means that it's cold. That there's a lot of frost, for example, that the mornings usually are very cold. Usually as well, no, I think we can say it's a cold winter. I was going to say something about rain as well, but I don't think it's necessarily related to rain or lack of rain. Okay. Any other questions here? No? Okay, let's keep reading. Let's see who's up next. Constantine, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you so much. The idea of social security for food might sound far-fetched, but through recently launched projects in Montpellier in France and Brussels in Belgium, burgeoning collectives of NGOs, farmers, researchers, and citizens are experimenting with the idea that quality, nutritious, and organic food should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income. Eating healthy and having access to quality food is expensive, and only a minority of the population can afford to do so, says Margherita Via, project manager at BEES Coop. Thank you.
Would you like to read one more?
Yes, thank you. Inspired by universal healthcare systems such as those in France and Belgium, civil society groups have proposed establishing a new branch of social security under which each citizen would receive a monthly allowance, enabling them to buy food meeting certain environmental and ethical criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part. Questions, comments? Okay, burgeoning. Has anyone heard this word before? Burgeoning. Any idea what it might mean? No? Looks like everybody might have the same question. Okay. When we talk about something that's burgeoning, generally we're talking about something that's kind of growing or developing in a fast way. It can also be kind of similar to flourishing that I think we've spoken about before. Inflating, yeah, it could be inflating a little bit, but kind of more in the idea of increasing or expanding, that kind of idea. Yeah, it's usually used in a positive way. Exactly. It's not really I mean, it could be used to talk about something negative growing, but usually it's the idea of something growing, expanding, doing well, flourishing. Exactly. So in this situation, obviously it's a positive meaning. The idea there's a lot of different groups which are, or a growing number of groups. Not just about thriving, because thriving is just the fact that it's doing well. Here we have that idea of growing as well, of getting bigger, of expanding or increasing in some way. So maybe like thriving, but also increasing or growing at the same time. Yep. Okay. What about NGOs? What does NGO stand for? The letters all represent something. Does anyone know? Constantine?
Yes, I think I know it. It is not government organizations.
Yes, exactly. Non-government organizations. So this is a kind of a new term that we use. In the past, it might have been called like a charity organization or a not-for-profit organization. Actually, we still use that term sometimes, but NGO is kind of the most up-to-date term for these kinds of organizations. Okay, what about far-fetched? Does anyone know what it means if we say something is far-fetched? Ah, okay. No problem, Nadia. Sorry. What about far-fetched? Here they've said that the idea might sound far-fetched. This might be a reason why it's far-fetched, but it's not the actual meaning. Yeah, difficult to obtain or not possible. Exactly. So if an idea is far-fetched, we've kind of got this idea that the idea is maybe a little bit crazy. It's not something that's likely to happen. Kind of an unrealistic type of idea. So if somebody tells you that something is far-fetched, it's the idea that it's maybe impossible or a little bit of a unrealistic idea. Utopistic? Yeah, it could be this as well, because a lot of the reasons why it seems like something that is, often something that would be really great, but couldn't really happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be this, though. We can talk about, for example, a far-fetched explanation, which could just be an explanation which is very hard to believe. An excuse that's a bit hard to believe. Oh, I'm late to work today because the aliens came down and they took my car. That's a bit far-fetched. It's not really something that you believe. It's a little bit strange, a little bit out there, the reason. Yeah. Doesn't have to be fabricated. It just means that it's a little bit out there, a little bit impossible. Yeah, I think I've heard of this store actually. So you could think about it as that. The store maybe sells things that you thought wouldn't be possible to buy anymore. that it's unlikely to find these items in other places. So maybe this is why they have this name for their store. They've kind of used that idea that the things that they sell are kind of unlikely to find in other places. Does that make sense for everyone now? Okay, great. Are there any other questions in this section before we keep reading? Burgeoning. Didn't we talk about burgeoning? Constantine, I think you were sleeping on us. Or maybe I'm just having deja vu, but I'm sure we talked about burgeoning, right? Okay. No problem. I'm not feeling 100% today, so it's entirely possible that I just imagined explaining it. Okay, remember, burgeoning is about something growing, something developing, something kind of flourishing in a way, getting bigger or expanding. Okay. Any other questions before we keep going? Exactly. Very good point, Nadia. Constantine, you have a second chance. If the recording works today, you can go back and you can listen to it again. I forgot. See, this is why I need you guys to remember to remind me. I'd forgotten that we were recording. Okay. Dom, let me post here where we're up to so that you can catch up to where we are.
Why there's a robot here?
Why is there a robot here? The robot is recording us today so that
Oh,
we can listen to it again afterwards.
cool.
We're not sure if it's going to work. We're just testing it out. We used to use it in the past and then it stopped working for a little while, so we stopped, but we're giving it another go again today. Okay. Let's keep reading then. Manu, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Natasha. Sorry, just a moment. Maybe I lost the point at itself. Okay. Thank you. At its heart, the idea is about moving away from food as a commodity, a total overhaul of the agro-industrial food system based on the right to food is necessary, says agronomist Mathieu Dalmey, was led the movement since its inception in 2017 through his work with ISF Agrista, one of 11 organizations working on the idea in France. As the costs of the modern globalized industrial food system, biodiversity loss, labor exploitation, food waste, disease have come into sharper focus in recent years, calls to transform it have intensified. Effectively addressing these issues requires a systemic approach, which is where social security for food comes in, explains Jonathan Peuch, advocacy officer on the right to food and nutrition at FIAM Belgium. Under the proposed scheme for France and Belgium, each person or parents for minors could automatically receive a fixed sum every month through, for example, a designated card between euros 100 to 150, $106 to 159 dollars and 88 pounds to 183 pounds monthly has been proposed for adults, and between 50 euros to 75 euros, $53 to $80, and for 44 pounds to 67 pounds for children. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. A lot of currencies and numbers there, Manu. Let's have a look at this part. Questions, comments? Yeah, it's always a little bit more complicated to talk about money and also to talk about ranges here as well. Probably the easiest way to do it is that you could talk about just the numbers first and then the currency. So, for example, 100 to 150 euros. That's probably like the shortest, easiest way to do it. But I know it's kind of confusing. We had euros, dollars, and pounds there. 3 different ranges. Okay. Any questions in this part? Manu, Dom, any questions? Yeah, this is one of the problems, right? Sometimes this kind of healthy food can be more expensive than the non-healthy food. Sometimes it's a lot cheaper to buy unhealthy food than it is to buy the healthy stuff. Maybe it depends a bit where you live as well. Maybe it's a little bit different in different countries. But this is definitely something interesting for us to talk about on Thursday as well when we're discussing it. Dom, any questions? No? Okay. Let's keep reading then. Dom, would you like to read?
I lost with the paragraph.
It's the one starting with like healthcare, the system.
Okay, like healthcare, the system would be financed through contribution from each citizen, proportional to their income. In Belgium, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ian has proposed people earning €3,000 to $3,190 and 2,650. I don't know what's the currency here. Gross monthly would contribute to €150 and $159 over £133 every month. Those earning more would contribute more, and those earning less would contribute less. Yet all would receive €150 monthly in effect, helping redistribute wealth from those with the most means to those with the least. Further funding could be raised through a state contribution, for example, from taxes on profits of multinational food companies, or through increasing excise duty on nutritional unhealthy products such as such as alcohol or tobacco. Politically, some people says is utopic, says few. I don't think it's utopic. It's just a choice for society to say we're going to increase our contribution and we want to put that money here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? You got a lot of money there as well. A lot of numbers. I think we're quite done with numbers yet, though. So I think we've still got some other numbers later in the article as well. We haven't quite finished with them all. Let's have a look at this part, though. Constantine?
Yes, thank you. I just would like to add a comment that because I had relative in Netherlands, so their taxes is so big, is something is more about 16% of your income. So that's why maybe they involve some involve people in some initiative, and so maybe it is another level of society because they have to pay a lot of taxes, and their taxes is implement in initiative like this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think people maybe feel more comfortable paying those higher taxes when they know that they're going to maybe see things like this as a result of them, when they kind of know that the money is going to come back to them in some way through programs like this. Maybe they feel more comfortable, or they feel happier about it. Let's have a look at this phrase, excise duties. Does anyone know what excise duties are? Has anyone heard this phrase before? Yeah, it's about taxes. So duties are, or a duty is a kind of tax. So we know it's a kind of tax. Does anyone know what type of tax it is? Maybe the clue to this one is who kind of pays it or when it's paid. It's not necessarily luxury goods. To be honest, a lot of the time excise duties are on things like alcohol, cigarettes or tobacco, energy, things like this. Yeah, it doesn't just have to be for harmful things as well. Okay, so the idea of an excise tax is that it's a tax on the goods when they're manufactured. Okay, so the tax gets charged to the companies who are manufacturing the goods instead of it being like a sales tax. Okay. So a sales tax, you know, as the consumer, when you pay it, usually it tells you like how much percentage you have to pay. An excise tax, the tax is kind of like earlier. It's charged during the manufacturing part of it. We probably would pay for it anyway because obviously it increases the cost of manufacturing. It's kind of like a hidden tax. So obviously if it's charged when it's manufactured, it means that there are kind of extra taxes on these products than on a normal product. So there's maybe the sales tax that you pay when it's sold to you, but there's also this other kind of hidden tax that's included when you pay earlier in the process. So it means that the government kind of get like two sets of tax, or more, to be honest, probably depending on what type of product it is. But it means that they kind of have like two different taxes that are charged on it. So these kinds of products, they kind of have extra taxes that some other products don't. Does that make more sense? Okay, great. Are there any other questions in this part? Okay, so the pronunciation here would be further funding. Further funding. Exactly, Manu, you've got it. It's kind of adding an extra cost to the manufacturer that in turn kind of helps to make up the final cost of the product, which means as the consumers, we pay for both of it anyway. Okay, any other questions here before we keep reading? Okay, utopic or utopic. What does utopic mean? I know that at least one of you know what it means because you mentioned it earlier. What does it refer to? What's another word that we can, or a phrase that we could use? Yeah, it's referring to utopia, but what is utopia? Constantine?
I think it is something that is hardly to realize in real life. Thank you.
Yeah. Utopia is kind of like that perfect, ideal place, the idea of like this perfect world where everything works perfectly, there's no problems, you know, that pleasant place that everybody would like to live in. So when we say something is utopic, what we mean is that it's kind of perfection in some way, this kind of perfect idea maybe that we have of something, which obviously we know doesn't really exist, right? It's maybe a little bit idealistic, you could think of in some way. So maybe idealistic is another word we could use here. In an ideal world, we would be able to do this, but we kind of live in the real world, not the ideal one. Makes more sense now? Any other questions? Okay, let's keep going then. Nadia, would you like to read again?
Yes. Only food products meeting certain criteria, such as organic certification, fair pay for farmers and workers, and short supply chains would be able to be purchased with the allowance, which could be used wherever those products are sold. These criteria are intended to support a wider transformation of the food system to one that is more just and sustainable. Although organic foods are not healthier in terms of nutrition, studies show they expose consumers to fewer pesticides associated with human disease and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Organic farming has less environmental impacts than conventional farming and can enhance biodiversity, increasing species richness by 30% and the number of organisms by 50%, according to meta-analysis comparing the two. Shall I continue?
Yes, just the next little paragraph.
Okay. France and Belgium's trials, which began earlier this year and last year, respectively, will each run for 12 months, and the early results appear to be positive.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at this part here. Questions, comments? Any questions in this part here? Looks like we've got to an easier part of the article. Let's see though. No, it's not easier. Let's see, there might still be some questions here. You have to be careful, right? You can't say that anything's too easy, otherwise I just find more difficult things. I think Dom already complained about that. He agrees with you. Constantine, Dom, any questions in this part? No. Looks like this part might be okay for everyone. I think Constantine might be writing a comment here. Let's see. Yeah, it could be helpful for farmers too. Exactly. But I think this is what they're talking about as well, kind of transforming the food system in general, maybe allowing farmers to do things in a different way than they do at the moment, to maybe invest in things that are a little bit more sustainable as well, instead of just whatever makes the cheapest, makes food the cheapest. Constantine?
Yes, thank you so much. I just would like to add, I faced it with such kind of problem recently. Then I heard about the embargo of export of grain from Ukraine. So, for example, European farmers do it
and they spend more money for growing grain. So grain from our country is much cheaper. So the government should to pay money for local farmers to grow some local grain and maybe grow it in more ecological way. So it's not problem only of countries, but it is problem of our global agriculture. It's about to grow some excuse me please, I have problem with connection. To grow some healthy products and to live in more healthy way. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. To have things that are kind of grown more locally, maybe just a little bit closer to home than some of the things, because sometimes our fruit and vegetables come a very, very long way to get to us. Dom, in this paragraph, they're kind of comparing non-organic to organic, exactly. So they're talking about some of the benefits here of organic compared to non-organic or conventional, which is the word they usually use, to like conventional produce. Okay. Let's keep reading a little bit more. So, Konstantin, would you like to read again?
Yes, thank you, but I'm not sure I'm on the right part of paragraph. Could you please remind me where we are?
Sure. It should be from In the Brussels Trial.
In the Brussels trial, funded by the country's social welfare center, participants from nearly 60 income households receive €150 monthly for 1 year without having to make a contribution to spend in one supermarket. BES Coop. Via says so far participants are mainly purchasing dietary staples, with a small fraction allocated towards non-food items such as soap and toilet paper. Hedge credits the intervention with improving her diet and easing her stress levels. I can buy organic fruit and vegetables and bulk products in the quantities I want, she says. The project in Montpellier, supplemented by public and private grants, gets closer to the goal of wealthier participants contributing more for their food for 1 year. Each of the 400 participants of whom live in poverty are required to contribute a voluntary amount between €1 and $1,050 and $1.1 and $159 and $0.9 and £133 monthly and will receive 100 euros, 108 and 90 pounds monthly, regardless of that they contributed. To prevent the allowance from being misused, the Citizens Committee behind the project issue the funds in a local currency that can be spent at 5 supermarkets across the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. It looks like you didn't avoid the currencies here, Konstantin. Okay. Let's have a look at how we can read these, because I know it's a little bit confusing. So the first one here, probably the quickest way, the easiest way to say it would be 1 to 150 euros. Okay, so we kind of like actually change the order a little bit of the words. The other ones are a little bit more complicated because now we've got cents involved as well and pence instead of just dollars or euros or pounds. So they get a little bit more confusing. The next one here, I would probably say, because we don't usually say $1.1, it's a little bit strange, which makes it a lot longer to say. We'd probably have to say $1.10 to $159. And then the second one, when we've got pounds and pence, we could say, for example, 90 pence or, probably 90 pence to 133 pounds. Okay. So I guess the biggest thing to remember when you're talking about currencies is the type of currency usually goes at the end. So the number goes first and then the currency. And if we have a point in the middle, if it's referring to cents or pence or something like this, we probably have to say that part separately as well. So it makes it a little bit longer. Is that clearer for everyone? I know currencies can be kind of difficult to read, especially when we have a lot of them together like this. Usually it's not so common that you have to say a lot of these currencies. The little dash in between here, when we're reading it, we can call it like a slash or a dash. We don't necessarily need to though. In this case, because we're really just talking about the equivalent, we could also use the word or. Okay. No, we wouldn't say over here because technically here we're not talking about something being over something else. We're just talking about like one value in 3 different currencies. So it's really saying that the second and the third options are really the same amount, just in different currencies. Yeah, you could also say equivalent to, exactly. If you wanted to be a little bit more formal, you could also say equivalent to. So you could say, for example, 150 euros equivalent to $159 and 133 pounds. You could say it this way as well. Or you could just use or. 150 euros or $159 or 133 pounds. I've had a lot of practice, Konstantin. We probably wouldn't use verses here because here we don't have like 2 values. They're not against each other. We're just really giving alternatives here for each of the numbers. Because really all these things are equal to each other. They're not kind of, we're not making a comparison between 2 different things. It's really the same thing, but expressed in 3 different ways. Okay. Yes, dietary staples, exactly. The staples are kind of like essential items. So if we're talking about dietary staples, it's like that kind of essential food that not most people in the country would eat. So they can change a little bit depending on which country you're talking about. England, for example, they would probably talk about, like bread and milk as being dietary staples. But you can probably think for your country, it might be something a little bit different. It could be eggs as well. Eggs are one of those things that sometimes go in and out of the staples, depending on how expensive they get. I know in the US, they're very expensive right now, so a lot of people are cutting them out of the staples. Manu, is this a question about what dairy items are or whether they are part of the staple? Question. I would say for most places, cheese wouldn't be a staple food. Dairy items as well, I would say it probably depends on what country you're from. For example, I think probably for the Asian countries, dairy items would not be a staple because they don't tend to eat these items so much. But maybe in like the UK or the US, maybe dairy items like milk. Milk is often included here. Bread, milk. What was the other food I said before? Maybe I just said bread and milk. But yeah, it kind of depends on the country. In a lot of places, rice would definitely be a staple food. Not so much in places like the UK and the US, but definitely in a lot of places, rice would be a staple food. Rice would definitely be a staple food in Brazil, for example. So like in Brazil, I would probably say that rice and beans are a staple food. These, if you only had money to buy like just a few basic items, most people would get rice and beans. So think about it that way as well. If you only had like a little bit of money to spend on food, what would be the foods that you would buy? Yeah, to be honest, bananas are kind of often included in this as well. But it depends. Bananas can sometimes become luxury items. I remember there was a time in Australia where there was a cyclone that basically wiped out the banana plantations. And suddenly bananas went from being a very cheap staple food to being like a luxury item. People would say that if you made a banana smoothie, that you must be rich if you're having a banana smoothie, because they suddenly became very, very expensive. Really. And we had to wait about a year for all the banana plants to grow back again, to recover, to have cheap bananas again. Yeah. This is why the staple foods can change. So in some places it might be other grains. It could be potato in some places as well. Potato is often a staple food in a lot of places. So you'll notice usually there's some kind of like starchy carbohydrate type food like bread, rice, corn in some places, potatoes. Usually one of these types of foods is always included as part of the staple foods. Okay, so I think everybody's got that idea anyway. Are there any other questions in this part? I think maybe we'll have a chance to read one more part. Good question. I don't think we usually classify water as food. Because usually when we're talking about it, we usually include it separately. So we talk about, for example, delivering clean water and food. So we usually talk about it separately. It's not technically a food. It's probably just as important, but it's not technically a food. Okay. Any other questions before we keep reading? Okay. So, Manu, would you like to read again?
Yes, sorry. Yes, but I'm a bit slow because I am having some problem with the article, so you have to wait me for a moment. I have to open the article every time. So maybe
really?
I am. Yes, I have some. Emma Patterson. Maybe starting from this point.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for delay. Emma Patterson, Senior Lecturer in Public Health Nutrition at Stockholm's Karolinska Institute, says the intervention is an excellent way of addressing structural barriers like cost and accessibility. There is good evidence to suggest working in a structural way is more effective than just providing information to people, she says. However, Patterson cautions that by restricting the funds to be spent only in certain shops, access may remain a barrier. To have a wide impact, you need to involve ordinary supermarkets and make this available to everybody. Otherwise, you'll be benefiting people already in a position to make extra trips to special shops. You'd miss reaching out to the wider segment of the population that needs to be helped, she says. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. Questions, comments? It looks like you're not the only one with this issue either, Manu. I didn't realize that it was a problem that lots of people were having. I wonder, is it related to maybe using your phone, maybe? Okay. This looks like maybe it's an issue using a phone. I think I'm the only one not using a phone today. Wow, I'm very impressed because I've tried to use a phone before and it was very frustrating. Nadia, if I have to use a phone as well, there's going to be a lot of other pauses and breaks here because it's going to take me a long time to keep changing back and forth between them. I like clicking back and forth too often. But that's okay. If we know that everybody's in the same situation, everybody can have patience with everybody else because you all know what you're going through. Oh, really, Manu? You have to let me know when you have these types of issues so that we can find another option, because I can always put it, for example, in a different type of a different kind of web page or share it in a different way if we need to. Okay. But quickly, because we're kind of out of time, are there any questions, any in this section here that we just read? Yeah, sometimes the page can have like a temporary problem But sometimes it's just as easy as refreshing it again, and it kind of fixes it. Okay. Well, we might stop here for today, but if you want, you might want to keep reading a little bit more. The next part here kind of talks a bit about the health side of things. So it talks about like the consequences of poor nutrition and also the problems that not having access to food or to healthy food can kind of cause for people. And also maybe looks at some of the obstacles to doing this. You know, why some people might not like this kind of action. They might not like this kind of solution to this issue. So if you want, try to have a look through the last section here, and let's talk about it more on Thursday. So maybe we can talk about a few of the different things that we were just discussing here. For example, what the staple foods are. Maybe about the difference in prices between healthy food and unhealthy food, or organic food, for example, how available it is, or whether it's maybe not available. And what you think about this type of action as well, whether you think this is a good way maybe to make improvements, or maybe you think there's a different way that we could kind of deal with some of these issues. So I'm interested to hear what you'll all think. And I didn't forget, let's see, I'm going to see if we can stop the recording as well. But thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed the session, and hopefully I will see you all again soon. Bye.